A forgotten empire once built highways across the open sea. This is the story of the Caravan Empire, a civilization that mastered the ocean itself, creating roads not of stone, but of myth and tidal force. By the end of this journey, you will uncover how their lost secrets challenge everything we know about ancient history. How did they bind the waves into pathways? And why did they vanish without a trace, leaving only legends behind? What does it truly mean for an entire world to simply disappear? Their story begins not with a crown, but with a star falling into the sea. Ancient texts whisper of a single, brilliant light that plunged into the waves, a celestial gift that ignited the first spark of the Caravan Empire. The people who gathered on those shores believed the ocean itself had spoken to them, forging a pact that granted them an intimate understanding of the water's hidden language. They were not warriors seeking land, but merchants and explorers at heart. Their wealth was measured in knowledge, in the subtle patterns of the currents and the steady guidance of the constellations above. They learned to read the ocean like a map, seeing paths in the swirling depths where others saw only empty, terrifying expanse. This unique bond allowed them to establish the first trade routes, a web of passageways connecting distant islands and coastal communities. These were not simple trails for barter. They were the veins of a new kind of civilization, flowing with stories, spices, and a shared understanding that would become legendary. This foundational era of connection, built on trust and cosmic guidance, set a powerful precedent. Their ambition, however, was not yet satisfied. A far grander vision was slowly taking shape in the minds of their star readers and tide callers, a project that would challenge the very nature of the world. Their ambition grew from a simple truth. The ocean was not their enemy, but a partner waiting to be understood. The vision was breathtaking in its scope, to weave the open seas into a predictable grid, to build roads of pure knowledge where none could be seen. Imagine the sheer terror of an ancient mariner, setting sail into a blue void with only hope as a compass. The Caravan Empire sought to erase that fear, to transform a dangerous gamble into a manageable journey, as reliable as walking a well-trodden path on land. This was not merely an economic project, it was a philosophical crusade. Apocryphal texts passed down through whispers speak of their desire to unite all the world's scattered shores, to create a single, breathing community bound by saltwater and starlight. They dreamed of a world where no island was ever lonely, where knowledge and goods flowed as freely as the tide. Picture a spider patiently spinning its web. Each silken strand is deliberate, connecting points into a stronger whole. This was the Empire's grand design, a living, breathing network of routes so vast and interconnected that the entire ocean would become their marketplace, their meeting hall, their home. But to weave this web, they needed a thread stronger than rope and a needle sharper than any tool ever forged. Their methods would have to defy the very nature of the sea itself, relying on a technology that seemed to belong to the realm of myth. They achieved this impossible feat by listening to the moon. While other cultures feared its pull on the tides, the Empire saw a partner in that distant silver light. They developed a profound science, one we might call tidal resonance today. This was not about fighting the ocean's power, but about learning its rhythm so perfectly they could dance with it. Think of pushing a child on a swing. If you push at just the right moment with the swing's natural rhythm, a tiny effort creates a huge, graceful arc. Push against that rhythm, and you achieve nothing but a jarring stop. The Empire's navigators became masters of the ocean's swing. They identified specific corridors across the sea where, during precise phases of the moon, the tidal forces would align. In these windows of time, conflicting currents would settle into a temporary truce, and powerful flows would merge into a single, predictable highway. A route from their capital to a distant archipelago might only be open for 3 days following the full moon. Another path, leading to a source of rare pearls, could only be traversed during the dark of the moon. Their entire calendar was a map, and the moon was its key. Modern oceanographers speculate that such a system would require an almost supernatural understanding of underwater topography. The empire must have known the exact shape of the seafloor, how canyons and ridges would channel and amplify tidal energy, creating these resonant pathways. They weren't building roads of stone, they were building roads of time itself, ephemeral avenues that pulsed with the very heartbeat of the planet. This was a network that was always changing, always alive, a testament to their belief that true power lay not in domination, but in perfect harmony. Yet, knowing the rhythm of the sea was only half the challenge. They still needed a way to see these invisible roads while sailing in the middle of an empty ocean. To see these tidal roads, they had to look up. The Empire's navigators turned their eyes to the night sky, where they found a map of perfect, unchanging constants. They did not merely use stars for general direction, they wove them into a celestial grid, a system of precise star lanes laid directly over the ocean's surface. Imagine a vast, invisible latticework projected down from the heavens, its lines connecting one constellation to another. A ship bound for the southern Spice Islands was not simply sailing south, it was following the path of the archer's bow, its mast kept in perfect alignment with 3 specific, brilliant stars in that constellation. Fragments of their navigational manuals survive as poetic instructions. One such text advises the helmsman to keep the tip of the mast forever brushing the heart of the sea serpent, and you will find the harbor's mouth. This was not a vague suggestion, it was a technical command. The star was a fixed point in an infinite dark, a beacon that could not be extinguished by weather or shifting currents. By holding that celestial alignment, a sailor knew with absolute certainty that he was traveling the center of the tidal highway, perfectly synchronized with the moon's rhythm below and the star's constant position above. The sky itself became their chart, a rotating clock and an unerring compass combined. This fusion of cosmic and oceanic knowledge created a guidance system of breathtaking accuracy. A navigator knew that if he left on the 3rd night of the waning moon and held his course by the Weaver's star, he would arrive at his destination with the dawn every single time. It was a dance between the eternal and the ephemeral, between the fixed stars and the flowing sea. But such a sophisticated system demanded more than just skilled sailors. It required a new kind of vessel, one capable of holding its course through the darkest nights and the most powerful currents. These roads were not built by human hands alone. Legends tell of the Empire's archmages, who commanded a workforce drawn from the very fabric of the world. They summoned beings of earth and sea to undertake a labor too vast for mortals. Giants with shoulders as broad as hills waded into the crushing depths to place colossal way stones on the seabed. Each stone was a focal point, an anchor that helped stabilize the chaotic flow of water and define the edges of the invisible highways. The rumble of their work was said to be mistaken for distant thunder for generations. Yet brute force was only one instrument in a grander symphony. To shape the water itself, the archmages called upon the sea folk, mermaids and their kin, with voices that could harmonize with the ocean's own frequency, would sing to the currents. Their melodies did not command the sea, but persuaded it. A swirling, unpredictable eddy would gradually calm into a steady, laminar flow under the influence of their ancient songs. They were weavers, using sound as their loom thread to bind the tidal roads into existence. This was a construction that required both the unstoppable force of a giant and the delicate finesse of a siren's chord. The giants provided the permanent physical architecture deep below, while the sea folk performed the constant, ethereal maintenance on the water column above. It was a perfect partnership of myth and muscle, a collaboration that explains why these roads felt so alive, as if they were built with a kind of conscious agreement from the ocean. How did an entire civilization capable of such wonders simply cease to be, leaving only these grand legends in its wake? Their mastery of the stars and tides was matched only by their command of the elements. To complete their oceanic highways, they needed a physical medium, a surface that could bear the weight of their great trade ships. This is where their forgotten alchemies came into play, a science so advanced it blurred the line into pure magic. Ancient manuscripts describe the creation of the Pathmaker's Elixir, a volatile concoction brewed from rare minerals, moonlight distilled water, and the crystallized sap of a deep sea plant that no longer exists. When this elixir was poured into the sea along a predetermined tidal route, it did not mix with the water. Instead, it initiated a rapid, temporary transformation. The surface of the ocean would harden into a glassy, semi-solid state, not quite ice and not quite crystal, but something entirely new. For a few precious hours, the water along the route gained a strange, gelatinous firmness, dampening the waves and creating a stable pathway that felt like sailing over polished obsidian. It was not a bridge but a guided channel, a rail of altered physics that kept vessels perfectly on course. The texts are very clear about the dangers. One wrong measurement, one impure ingredient, and the reaction could reverse catastrophically. There are warnings of routes that turn to instant, crushing ice, trapping entire fleets. Other accounts tell of the water becoming thinner than air, losing all buoyancy and causing ships to plummet straight into the abyss. This was not a safe technology. It was a calculated risk, a pact with the very nature of reality. The alchemists were not just cooks following recipes. They were artists conducting a symphony of molecular change, playing with forces they understood just enough to harness. They provided the final, tangible layer to the Empire's grand design, turning resonant tidal energy and celestial guidance into a road you could actually sail upon. But such immense power could not be wielded without consequence, and the very substances that built their world may have also contained the seeds of its ultimate undoing. These phantom lighthouses were the signposts of an invisible world, crafted from enchanted crystals that drank the light of the sun and moon. They stored that radiance to be released as a guiding beam only when a ship of the Empire drew near. To any other vessel, the sea remained a featureless, dark expanse. This was a security measure, ensuring that the Empire's sacred routes remained their exclusive domain. The most legendary of all was the Pharaohs of the Abyss, a structure said to be anchored not to any land, but to the very edge of an underwater chasm. Its light did not shine upward, but plunged downward, illuminating the terrifying depths so that sailors could see the safe path coiling along the trench's rim. Imagine sailing over a canyon so deep it seemed to have no bottom. Your only guide a shaft of ethereal blue light revealing the monstrous, beautiful geology of the deep. That beam was a lifeline, a psychological anchor in a landscape of pure dread. It whispered to the navigators that they were still on the road, that the Empire's power reached even here, into the heart of the ocean's greatest mysteries. These beacons formed a chain of trust across thousands of miles, each one a promise that the next safe passage was just over the horizon. They turned the perpetual night of the deep ocean into a navigable space, a mapped territory. But what good is a perfectly marked road if the travelers upon it cannot find their way to the next port in a world without landmarks? The final piece of their guidance system was perhaps the most clever of all, a map that was not a map at all. This flow of wonder became the empire's lifeblood, a currency more valuable than gold. Along the solidified tidal highways moved goods that defied belief, items that were the stuff of dreams for other cultures. Dragon scales, each one harder than diamond and shimmering with latent heat, were traded for their unparalleled protective qualities. Phoenix feathers, which glowed with a soft, eternal light, provided illumination in the deepest mines and most secret libraries. And mermaid tears, crystallized droplets of pure emotion, were said to hold powerful enchantments for healing and truth. These were not mere commodities. They were the fundamental components of the empire's advanced society, the raw materials for their alchemies and architectures. To facilitate this extraordinary trade, legendary ports rose from the coasts. The most famous was Silt Haven, a city built entirely on stilts over a tranquil lagoon. Its docks were not designed for mundane cargo. You would not see crates of grain or pottery here. Instead, the air hummed with the energy of 1,000 different magics. Merchants haggled over levitating stones in one stall, while in another, appraisers used enchanted lenses to judge the purity of a griffin's claw. The city's canals were plied by silent barges carrying whispering sands from the deserts of the world's edge and seeds that sang when planted. This was a marketplace where the entire known world and many of its unknown corners met to exchange not just goods but knowledge, stories, and the very essence of wonder itself. The economic power this generated was astronomical. The empire did not hoard this wealth, but reinvested it back into the system, funding more expeditions, building more beacons, and refining their Pathmaker's Elixir. They created a self-reinforcing cycle of discovery and prosperity. A single successful voyage could fund the construction of an entire new lighthouse, which in turn secured a route to another previously inaccessible land, yielding even rarer goods. This constant influx of impossible resources fueled a cultural and technological golden age unlike any other. Artisans worked with materials that bent light, architects designed structures that challenged gravity, and scholars studied texts written in languages of water and wind. The empire's true power was not in its armies or its borders, but in its absolute monopoly on the flow of miracles. They became the indispensable heart of the world, the only conduit through which such wonders could travel. But what happens when the heart of the world simply stops beating? The true legacy of the Caravan Empire was not written in stone, but whispered on the wind and water. Their oceanic highways became the greatest storytelling network the world had ever known, a living conduit for myths that traveled faster than any merchant ship. A hero's epic born on a sun-drenched volcanic isle would find itself being recounted months later with startling familiarity in a fog-shrouded port at the edge of the world. The roads were veins, and myth was their circulating lifeblood. This was not a simple transfer of tales, but a process of constant creative transformation. The Storm Queen of the Northern Archipelagos, a deity who rode the gales in a chariot of lightning, would slowly morph as her story sailed south. In warmer climates where thunderstorms were a relief, she became a benevolent figure, the rain bringer whose tears nurtured the crops. Her chariot softened into a bank of life-giving clouds, and her fierce character was rewritten as one of maternal generosity. The core of the story remained, but its meaning adapted to its new home. Languages themselves began to blend at the way stations and legendary ports. A single word for a specific type of tidal current, one that meant safe passage in the empire's tongue, would be absorbed into a dozen coastal dialects. It became a shared term of hope, a linguistic fossil pointing back to the common source of all their prosperity. Gods of the deep from different cultures, once feared as local and territorial spirits, were gradually merged into a single, more complex pantheon understood by all who sailed the roads. This created a tapestry of belief so interconnected that a sailor far from home could find a familiar face in a foreign temple, a statue that echoed the god he prayed to in his own village. This shared mythology was the empire's most powerful and most fragile creation. It built a common identity that transcended geography and bloodline, defining an entire age of unprecedented cultural unity. Yet this very interconnectedness meant that when the heart of this network faltered, the shock would ripple through every story, every prayer, and every distant land that had come to depend on the flow of wonder. These liquid roads were not left unguarded. To patrol the vast, silent expanses between beacons, the Empire enlisted the service of ancient beings known as the Guardians. They were the living law of the open ocean, entities like the storm wardens who could calm a squall with a whispered command, and the Leviathan sentinels, colossal creatures whose passing could be felt for miles. Their sole purpose was to protect the sanctity of the tidal highways from those who would prey upon its travelers. Imagine a trade caravan, a string of ships laden with luminous phoenix feathers and singing seeds, finding itself lost in a sudden, unnatural fog. The celestial guide stars are blotted out, the water grows unnervingly still, and then the horror begins. Massive, slimy tentacles, each thicker than the mainmast, rise from the depths, coiling around the hull of the lead vessel with the intent to drag it down into the abyss. This was the domain of the Krakens, creatures of chaos that despised the ordered paths of the Empire. Just as the ship's timbers begin to splinter, a deep, resonant hum fills the air, a vibration that travels through the water and into the very bones of the sailors. From the gloom glides a Leviathan sentinel, its scale-covered body longer than the entire caravan. It does not engage the monster with tooth and claw, but with a display of pure, overwhelming presence. It emits a pulse of sound so low and powerful that it forces the kraken to release its grip, stunning the beast into submission. The sentinel then positions its immense form between the caravan and the threat, a living, breathing bulwark. It remains there, a silent mountain in the sea, until the fog dissipates and the stars reappear, guiding the shaken sailors back to the safety of their route. This was the unspoken contract of the Empire. The Guardians ensured that a merchant's greatest risk was the sea itself, not the monsters that lurked within it. They were the final, crucial component that made travel not just possible but reliable. Without their watchful eyes in the deep, the wealth of the world would have been too tempting a target, and the roads would have become avenues of piracy and fear instead of conduits of unity and wonder. But even the most vigilant guardian cannot protect against a disaster that strikes the very foundation of their world. The Empire's greatest strength ultimately became its fatal weakness. A deep ideological crack appeared within the ruling councils, a schism that would fracture their unity from the inside out. On one side stood the isolationists who believed their mastery of the sea was a sacred trust, a secret to be guarded at all costs. They argued that sharing the knowledge of the tidal roads, the celestial grid, and the Pathmaker's elixir would lead to chaos. Any upstart kingdom could then plunder the sacred sites, disrupt the resonant flows, and shatter the delicate balance they had spent centuries building. Theirs was a philosophy of protection through exclusion. The other faction, the expansionists, saw this as a betrayal of the Empire's founding principle. Had they not been born from a desire to connect all shores, to end the loneliness of distant islands, they believed the knowledge was a gift to be shared, a light to lift all of humanity into a new age of unity. They dreamed of a global commonwealth bound by shared understanding where the Empire would lead as wise teachers, not jealous masters. This was not a simple political dispute. It was a war for the soul of their civilization, fought in council chambers and harbor taverns with equal ferocity. The first physical clashes were deceptively small. An expansionist navigator attempting to teach the star lanes to a foreign scholar might find his charts stolen and his ship mysteriously sabotaged. An isolationist beacon keeper refusing to light the way for a vessel from a potential ally would discover his lighthouse crystals smashed by an unknown hand. These acts of sabotage were the initial tremors before the earthquake. The conflict escalated from whispers to open warfare when the expansionists, in a desperate bid for leverage, seized control of the alchemical forges that produced the Pathmaker's Elixir. They threatened to disseminate the formula to the world if their demands for openness were not met. The isolationists responded with terrifying finality. They unleashed the very guardians meant to protect the roads upon their own people. Legends tell of Leviathan sentinels turning on expansionist fleets, of storm wardens conjuring maelstroms to swallow whole squadrons of their sister ships. The Oceanic highways, once symbols of connection, became battlefields. The perfect, resonant harmony of the tides was thrown into discord by the chaos of magical warfare, and the stable routes began to flicker and fail. A ship might be sailing a perfectly calm, solidified path one moment, only to have the elixir's effect vanish, plunging it back into a turbulent, chaotic sea. This civil war did not destroy the empire in a single, catastrophic event. Instead, it was a slow, internal bleeding. The trust that had been their foundation was shattered. The shared purpose that allowed giants and sea folk to work in concert evaporated. Their greatest achievement, the network that fed them miracles, was being systematically poisoned by the very hands that built it. The roads grew unreliable, the flow of wonder slowed to a trickle, and the legendary ports began to wither. The empire was breaking its own back, and in its stubborn pride, it never saw the true danger gathering beyond the horizon of its own conflict. The first sign of the end came not with a war cry, but with a whisper of failing light. Navigators on the midnight watch began reporting a terrifying phenomenon. The enchanted crystals of the phantom lighthouses, designed to burn for eternity, were dimming. A beacon that once cast a beam visible for 50 leagues might now only glow like a faint candle on the horizon, its light sputtering erratically before vanishing entirely for nights on end. This was more than a mechanical failure, it was a spiritual one. The chain of trust that spanned the empty oceans was breaking, link by link. Sailors who had once sailed with absolute confidence now hesitated at the edge of the known world, their ships laden with priceless cargo, staring into a darkness that was no longer mapped. The star lanes themselves seemed to grow faint, as if the celestial grid was dissolving back into a random scattering of lights. Holding a course by the Weaver's star became a guess rather than a guarantee, the alignment slipping away as if the sky itself was turning against them. This loss of guidance was catastrophic. The predictable tidal highways, the very foundation of their travel, became treacherous. A route that had been open for 3 days every lunar cycle might now only be stable for a few hours, or worse, it might surge with chaotic, conflicting currents without any warning. Ships that had timed their voyages for generations found themselves caught in sudden, violent storms or becalmed in dead zones, their hulls gnawed at by sea monsters that the faltering guardians could no longer keep at bay. Trade, the empire's lifeblood, slowed to a nervous trickle. The great merchant fleets grew smaller, their schedules abandoned. In legendary ports like Silt Haven, the docks grew quiet. The hum of 1,000 different magics faded, replaced by the anxious murmurs of merchants facing ruin. The shared stories that once flowed so freely along these routes twisted into tales of fear and loss. Isolation, that old enemy the empire was founded to defeat, began to creep back into the world. communities that had been vibrant, interconnected hubs found their supplies of wonder cut off. They were slowly becoming lonely islands again, their windows to the wider world closing one by one. The great network was not snapping but unraveling, and each broken thread left another part of the map blank and terrifying. Even the most vigilant guardians could not defend against a collapse from within. The empire did not fall to a foreign invasion or a natural plague, but to a series of catastrophes so profound they erased the civilization from the world's memory, leaving only competing legends in their wake. The first and most dramatic theory speaks of a great sinkhole, a sudden collapse in the very bedrock of their capital island. The texts describe it not as a geological event, but as a metaphysical one. The land, exhausted from centuries of channeling immense tidal forces and supporting the weight of their reality-bending alchemies, simply gave way. In a single, terrible hour, the heart of the network, the libraries of star charts, the forges of the Pathmaker's Elixir, and the ruling councils were all dragged down into a newly formed abyss. The sea rushed in to fill the void, leaving not a ruin but an empty expanse of water. This theory serves as a stark lesson on the dangers of overreach. It suggests that their ambition to reshape the world finally demanded a price the world itself was unwilling to pay, that the foundation of their power was far more fragile than they ever believed. A second, more haunting theory proposes that the empire fell not from the ground giving way, but from the betrayal of their closest allies. This is the story of the Elemental Rebellion. The giants who placed the way stones, the sea folk who sang the currents into calm, and the storm wardens who policed the skies, what if they finally grew weary of their servitude? After generations of being commanded, their ancient spirits revolted. The legends say the giants did not merely stop working, they began pulling the very stones from the seabed, causing the tidal resonances to snap like overtuned strings and creating chaotic whirlpools where highways once flowed. The sea folk songs, once melodies of persuasion, became dissonant shrieks that churned the water into a frenzy. The empire's mastery over the elements was revealed as a fragile contract, not a command, and when that contract was broken, the very tools of their creation became the instruments of their destruction. This theory warns of the hubris in believing one can forever command the fundamental forces of nature, that even the most powerful partnership can be shattered by arrogance. Perhaps the most chilling theory of all is that the empire's end was not an accident or an attack, but a choice. Faced with the escalating civil war and the terrifying prospect of their knowledge falling into the wrong hands, the last archmages performed a ritual of collective forgetting. They did not destroy their cities or sink their islands. Instead, they unraveled the memory of themselves from the fabric of the world. This grand erasure wiped the star lanes from the minds of navigators, silenced the songs of the sea folk, and dissolved the very concept of their civilization from the consciousness of every human and creature they had connected. The roads did not collapse, they were simply forgotten, becoming empty ocean once more. The legendary ports did not crumble, they were just left to decay, their purpose lost to time. This final act was the ultimate expression of their isolationist philosophy, a desperate, tragic solution to ensure that no one could ever misuse their power again. It is a theory that questions the very nature of history, suggesting that the greatest empires are not those that leave ruins, but those that vanish so completely they become little more than a whisper on the wind. Each of these endings, whether a collapse of earth, a rebellion of spirit, or a surrender of memory, carries the same profound message about the delicate balance between grand ambition and the consequences of wielding power too great for any civilization to hold indefinitely. The ghost of their celestial grid still hangs in the sky above us. We have simply given it a new name and built it with our own hands. The Empire's star lanes, those fixed paths between constellations, are the direct conceptual ancestor of the satellite constellations that power our global positioning system today. They understood that to navigate a fluid world, you needed fixed points of reference in the heavens. We have done the same, but instead of relying on the archer's bow, we have placed our own artificial stars in precise orbits, creating a new, invisible grid that our devices can read to pinpoint any location on Earth. The principle is identical, a testament to a fundamental human need for orientation in a vast and trackless world. Their legendary intuition for the ocean's hidden forces also finds its echo in our most advanced marine science. The Empire's masters of tidal resonance, who could feel the moon's pull on the water's pulse, were practicing a form of predictive oceanography centuries ahead of its time. Today, we use sophisticated sonar to map the seafloor they once knew by heart, revealing the underwater canyons and ridges that shape those very currents. Our supercomputers run complex models of tidal flows, attempting to predict the ocean's behavior with mathematical precision, striving for the same mastery they achieved through a deep, symbiotic relationship with their environment. They listened to the sea, and now we listen with machines, but the goal of finding safe, efficient pathways across the blue expanse remains unchanged. This is the enduring legacy of their lost knowledge. It was not a collection of spells, but a profound way of seeing the world as an interconnected system. They looked at the sky and saw a map. They listened to the tide and heard a schedule. They understood that the environment was not an obstacle to be conquered, but a partner to be understood. In our rush to build and control, we often forget that ancient wisdom. Their story whispers a crucial question to our technologically advanced present. Are we truly more advanced, or have we simply rediscovered, with silicon and steel, truths that a vanished empire once knew in its bones? The past is not a separate country. It is the foundation upon which we are still building, and its echoes are all around us if we only know how to listen. The ocean floor guards its secrets under miles of crushing darkness, but modern technology is beginning to pry them loose. Sonar maps have revealed startling anomalies that defy natural explanation, straight-line ridges and perfectly geometric patterns etched into the abyssal plains where only chaos should reign. These are not the gentle curves of ancient lava flows or the random scatter of landslide debris. They are the stark, angular signatures of intelligent design, submerged so deep that their creation predates any known civilization's ability to reach such depths. One of the most compelling examples is the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, a massive sandstone structure that resembles a stepped pyramid, complete with what appear to be terraces, stairways, and even a star-shaped pool. Mainstream geology argues it is a natural formation, shaped by tidal forces and tectonic shifts, but the sheer prevalence of 90-degree angles and parallel lines whispers of a different story, one of a lost chapter in human history, or perhaps something even older. These sunken ruins are not found in isolation. Scattered across the globe, ancient shipwrecks tell a parallel tale of impossible journeys. A vessel discovered in the Mediterranean, carbon dated to over 3,000 years old, was found to be carrying spices and artifacts that could only have originated in the Americas. How did a Bronze Age ship cross an ocean that, according to all history books, would not be traversed for another 2 millennia? The cargo holds of these ghost ships are time capsules of a global trade network that should not have existed, their very presence forcing us to question the timeline of human exploration. These are not just sunken rocks and old boats. They are the physical, tangible evidence that the legend of the Caravan Empire might be more than just a fireside story. Each straight line on a sonar readout, each piece of foreign cargo in a primordial wreck, is a piece of a puzzle we are only now learning how to see. The debate between myth and history rages on, but the ocean floor is no longer silent. It is asking us a question, one artifact at a time. What other forgotten truths lie buried beneath the waves, waiting for the right echo to find them? The most tantalizing clues lie in the Empire's untranslated script, a language of elegant curves and sharp angles found on sun-bleached waystones and the tarnished metal of salvaged navigational tools. This is not a simple alphabet for recording poetry or laws. Each glyph is a dense packet of information, a locked door barring our way to their deepest secrets. Modern linguists and cryptographers have hit a wall with this code because it appears to operate on a logic entirely alien to our own. It does not seem to be a language of nouns and verbs describing the physical world, but a system of direct commands and relationships more akin to a complex mathematical equation or a piece of computer code than a story. One recurring symbol, a spiral intersecting a straight line, is hypothesized to represent the concept of tidal resonance itself. Another, a star perched above a wavy line, might be the instruction for hold course by the celestial guide. The true breakthrough would be finding what cryptographers call a Rosetta Stone, a single artifact bearing the same text in both the Caravan script and a known language. So far, no such key has been discovered. The frustration is palpable. A single clay tablet might be covered in hundreds of these symbols, and if it is a recipe for the Pathmaker's elixir, a single misread character could mean the difference between creating a stable highway and unleashing a cataclysm. The language itself is the final, perfect safeguard. It is designed so that only those who already understand the principles behind their science can ever hope to read it. This creates a maddening loop. To understand their technology, you must read their language, but to read their language, you must already understand their technology. Every attempt at translation is a high-stakes guessing game, where a scholar's best hypothesis could be leading us toward a profound truth or sending us down a centuries-old path of elegant, logical error. What if we have already translated the symbols correctly, but we simply lack the context, the innate feeling for the ocean's rhythm, to comprehend what the commands are truly asking us to do? The Empire's greatest secret may not be what they did, but how they thought, and that is a ghost that is far, far harder to capture. Their mastery of the ocean was a borrowed authority, a temporary lease on power signed with forces far older than any human kingdom. The Empire did not command the sea through sheer will, they negotiated with it. Ancient fragments of text speak not of spells of domination, but of solemn covenants, binding agreements made with the elemental lords of the current and the gale. These were not gods in a human sense, but vast, conscious embodiments of the world's natural systems. The Lord of the deep currents was the ocean's own memory, a being that knew the path of every drop of water since time began. The Queen of the Trade Winds was the breath of the planet itself. To these entities, the Empire made its case. They promised not to conquer the waves, but to honor them, to build pathways that would, in turn, strengthen the flow of life throughout the world's waters. In exchange for this permission, they offered services. Some texts describe annual offerings of polished stones and sung harmonies, gifts of beauty to please a consciousness that valued pattern and resonance. Others suggest the pact was more practical. The Empire's navigators acted as the eyes and ears for these elemental lords, reporting shifts in the seafloor or strange stagnations in the flow of water that the lords themselves, in their vastness, might not perceive. The power to solidify the water with the Pathmaker's elixir was not a theft. It was a granted exception to the normal laws of physics, a temporary suspension allowed only within the strict boundaries of the tidal roads. This explains the inherent danger of their technology. Stray from the agreed path and the pact was void, the ocean would reassert its true nature with catastrophic force. Their entire civilization was built on this foundation of trust and mutually beneficial exchange. So what happens when a debtor civilization forgets the terms of its loan? The most tragic theory for their fall is not a war or a natural disaster, but a simple, profound breach of contract. As the empire grew richer and more arrogant from its civil war, the offerings may have become less sincere, more rushed. The reports from their navigators might have grown unreliable, filled with the politics of the schism rather than pure observation. They began to act as if the power was theirs by right, a possession to be fought over, rather than a privilege granted by ancient, patient beings. The breaking of a pact with the wind and water is not a loud event. It is a silent withdrawal. One day, the resonant harmony simply was not there. The tidal highways remained as unpredictable as any other part of the sea. The elixir, when poured, no longer found a willing partner in the water to complete its transformation. The elemental lords had ceased to listen, and the empire's borrowed power was called due. Their greatness was never truly their own, and in forgetting that, they were left with nothing but the empty ocean they had once believed they mastered. This pattern of a lost seafaring civilization is not unique to the Caravan Empire. Look across the globe and you will find the same story whispered in a dozen different tongues. The Phoenicians, master navigators of the ancient Mediterranean, were said to possess a secret map of the Atlantic currents, a chart so accurate they could sail to the British Isles and back under starless skies. Their city of Tyre was an island fortress of unimaginable wealth until it was conquered and its secrets scattered to the winds. Then there is the great Pacific continent of Mu, a land described in various traditions as the mother of all civilizations, a paradise with a technology that harnessed the power of crystals. Legends claim Mu sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of fire, leaving only the scattered islands of Polynesia as its gravestones. Even in the wilder fringes of mythology, you find the Vrilya, an underground race said to have escaped a surface cataclysm in prehistoric times, possessing a mysterious energy force that granted them mastery over land and sea. The details change, the names are different, but the core elements remain hauntingly familiar. A people with an uncanny understanding of the ocean, a technology or knowledge that seems almost magical to us, and a final, abrupt vanishing act that leaves no clear answers. Why does this specific legend echo so persistently across cultures and continents, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the islands of the Pacific? It speaks to a deep, primal human urge to conquer the last great wilderness, the sea. The ocean is our final frontier, a vast, untamable force that both feeds and terrifies us. These myths are our collective dreams of overcoming that fear, of a time when the blank spaces on the map were not empty, but filled with the lights of impossible cities and the sails of ships that knew no boundaries. They represent a golden age of connection that we feel we have lost, a universal nostalgia for a world that was whole. Perhaps we keep telling these stories because, on some level, we are trying to remember a truth we have collectively forgotten, or preparing ourselves for a connection we have yet to rediscover. The ultimate goal of their alchemy was not a road, but a destination. Beyond the temporary solidity of the Pathmaker's elixir lay a far grander vision, a legendary substance referred to in the most fragmented texts as the aqua vitae maris, the living water of the sea. This was not a tool for transient travel, but a means of permanent transformation, a philosopher's stone for the ocean itself. Imagine the power to still a raging tempest not for an hour, but for a century, to create a sheltered harbor where none existed by simply persuading the waves to lie down and rest. The most audacious whispers suggest they sought to pull solid land directly from the water, to grow new islands from the seabed like crystals forming in a solution. This quest was the driving force behind their most perilous experiments, the holy grail that pushed their understanding of reality to its absolute limit. The pursuit of this ultimate elixir explains the sheer scale of their alchemical forges and the risks they were willing to take. A single, stable vial of aqua vitae maris would have rendered the entire network of tidal highways obsolete. Why follow a temporary road when you could create a permanent port in the middle of the open ocean, a fixed point in the trackless blue? This dream of absolute maritime mastery likely consumed generations of their finest minds. But such power is a paradox. To achieve it, they may have had to break the very pact that gave them their lesser abilities in the first place. The elemental lords of the current and the gale would never agree to a permanent calming of the seas, for the ocean's nature is movement, change, and raw, untamed energy. The aqua vitae maris was not a negotiation with the sea, but an attempt to overrule it. In striving for this final, impossible prize, they may have been reaching for the one thing their world would never allow them to have, touching the very boundary between creation and calamity. Separating the historical thread from the mythological tapestry is like trying to follow a single current across the entire ocean. The stories of giants and sea folk are not lies, but a form of ancient code, a way for oral traditions to package complex truths in memorable, symbolic containers. A master engineer who understood how to calculate the resonant frequency of a tidal basin, a man who could predict the perfect moment to pour his elixir, would be described by later generations as an archmage who commanded the waves. His advanced technique, grounded in a deep empirical understanding of his environment, would be remembered as a spell. The process is natural and universal. Think of a rumor passed through a dozen people in a room. The original sentence, "the car was blue," can easily become a story about a flying sapphire chariot by the time it reaches the last person. Now amplify that over hundreds of years and countless storytellers. The real challenge is not to dismiss the myth, but to learn how to read it. The giants lifting stones are a powerful metaphor for the immense, coordinated labor required for their underwater engineering. The singing mermaids are a poetic representation of the empire's use of acoustic science, of using specific sound frequencies to influence water's behavior, a concept modern researchers are only beginning to explore. The truth of the Caravan Empire is not buried under the fiction. It is woven directly into it. To find it, we must listen not for the literal description, but for the underlying principle the story is trying to preserve. Every legend about commanding the elements is likely a faded memory of a profound ecological understanding, a way of working with nature that was so effective it seemed, to those who came after, like magic. This layered reality is what makes their story so compelling, a puzzle where every piece is both a fact and a fairy tale, waiting for us to understand the key. Even now, the Empire haunts the dreams of those who sail. Its memory has not vanished, but has been distilled into the salt-soaked stories passed between sailors on night watch. These are not formal histories, but living ghosts, the Empire's spirit refusing to be forgotten by the sea it once ruled. Fishermen in the Northern Isles still sing a chanty about the Phantom Fleet, a procession of silent, glowing galleons seen on the horizon during the autumn equinox. The old song says these are not shipwrecks, but the Empire's vessels forever traveling their celestial routes, their crews forever bound to the star lanes they map. The sailors claim if you listen closely on a still night, you can hear the faint harmonic hum of the sea folk's songs, a vibration in the water that guides the lost and comforts the weary. These are not just spooky tales to explain strange lights. They are a deep, cultural memory of a time when the ocean was a known and ordered place, a nostalgic echo of safety in the vast unknown. On distant shores, mothers tell their children bedtime stories about the lost city of Caravans, a place of shimmering spires that rises from the mist once every 100 years, its markets overflowing with impossible treasures. The story always ends the same way. The city fades before the sun rises, because it is not a place you can find on a map, but a longing for a golden age of connection and wonder. This is how history survives when written records turn to dust. It weaves itself into the very fabric of our imagination. The Empire's greatest legacy is not in the ruins we might one day find, but in the stories we continue to tell, a testament to a human need so powerful it outlives the civilization that first fulfilled it. Their story taps into a deep, psychological nerve we all share. This is the archetype of the builder and the vanisher, a pattern that haunts our collective imagination. We are drawn to tales of civilizations that achieve the impossible, only to disappear without a trace, because they hold up a dark mirror to our own ambitions. The Caravan Empire is more than a historical mystery. It is a powerful symbol of our deepest anxieties. Every society dreams of leaving a permanent mark, of building something so grand it will echo through the ages. We construct soaring skyscrapers, vast digital networks, and intricate systems of knowledge, all with the hope that our work will endure. The Empire, with its roads across the ocean, represents the absolute peak of that desire. They did not just build with stone, they built with the very fabric of nature, attempting to weave order into chaos itself. Their achievement was the ultimate expression of the builder's dream. Yet their sudden, silent end also embodies our greatest fear, the terror that all this effort is ultimately fragile. No matter how grand our cities or how advanced our technology, they can all be undone by a single crack in our unity, a forgotten pact with the world, or the simple, relentless passage of time. This archetype resonates because it forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. If a civilization that could bind the tides could vanish so completely, what hope do our own accomplishments have? We see our own potential for greatness in their mastery of the sea, and we see our own potential for oblivion in their empty oceans. This duality is the core of their enduring power. They are not just a lost kingdom, but a cautionary tale and an inspiration rolled into one. They remind us that the line between a timeless legacy and a forgotten whisper is perilously thin, a truth that every generation must learn for itself. The hunt for their ghostly highways has not ended. It has simply traded parchment charts for satellite imagery. Modern explorers, a new breed of myth hunters armed with multi-beam sonar and autonomous drones, are now probing the abyss for the Empire's signature. Their quest is driven by a powerful blend of scientific curiosity and a deep, almost romantic yearning to prove that the greatest story ever told about the sea might just be true. These are not treasure hunters seeking gold, but truth seekers chasing an echo. They spend months on research vessels, their screens painting three-dimensional maps of the seafloor in exquisite detail, searching for the subtle, straight-line anomalies that nature could never create on its own. Every strange geometric ridge or unnervingly circular depression is a potential clue, a candidate for a sunken waystone or the foundation of a phantom lighthouse. One such team, led by a marine archaeologist who first heard the legends from her grandmother, recently spent 6 weeks surveying a deep-sea trench rumored to be the location of the pharaohs of the abyss. They found nothing they could definitively prove, and yet she says the data holds a peculiar, ordered pattern of sediment flow that still keeps her awake at night. The passion is its own kind of fuel, a stubborn refusal to let such a magnificent possibility simply fade away. On another front, specialists in satellite archaeology scan coastal regions, looking for the faint, spectral outlines of forgotten ports beneath the sand, a technique that has already revealed lost cities in other parts of the world. They search for the telltale grid patterns of silt havens' stilt foundations, now perhaps buried under millennia of silt and mangrove roots. The technology is new, but the dream is ancient. Each dive of a submersible into the crushing dark, each pixelated scan from orbit, is a vote of confidence in the legend itself. It is a belief that the Empire left more than just stories, that beneath the waves and the sand, a physical testament to their genius is waiting patiently for us to become clever enough to find it. If the formula for the Pathmaker's elixir were to be found tomorrow, etched onto a sunken tablet, would we be wise to use it? This is not a question of engineering, but of conscience. The power to build roads across the open ocean would fundamentally reshape our world, and not necessarily for the better. Imagine the immediate chaos in global shipping. The established routes through canals and along coastlines would become obsolete overnight, collapsing the economies of nations that depend on them. New, direct pathways would be carved through marine sanctuaries and fragile breeding grounds, disrupting ecosystems that have thrived in isolation for millennia. The cacophony of ship traffic and the chemical signature of the elixir itself could deafen and poison the very creatures the Empire once worked in concert with, turning a symphony of coexistence into a dirge of extinction. Geopolitical tensions would reach a boiling point. Who gets to control these new highways? Would it be the nation that discovers the secret, claiming the power to levy taxes on all ocean travel? Or would it lead to a new, desperate scramble for territorial claims over the high seas, creating conflicts far beyond any border dispute we have today? The Empire's knowledge was wielded by a single, unified culture with a deep, spiritual pact with the ocean. Our world is fractured, driven by competing national interests and corporate profit. Placing such a tool into that arena is less like handing a child a key and more like handing a lit match to a room full of dynamite. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Perhaps the silence that followed the Empire's fall was not a tragedy, but a final, merciful act of preservation, a lesson sealed away for a species not yet ready to bear its weight. Something about this lost empire refuses to let us go. It is more than a historical puzzle. It is a story that speaks directly to the human spirit. We are wired for exploration, for the thrill of pushing back the edges of the map, and the Caravan Empire represents the ultimate fulfillment of that desire. They did not just explore the unknown, they domesticated it, turning the terrifying emptiness of the open ocean into a familiar backyard. This taps into a deep, almost childlike wonder within us, a longing for a world where every journey is an adventure and every horizon holds a promise, not a peril. The mystery of their disappearance adds a layer of poignant beauty. Like a beautifully crafted song that ends on an unresolved chord, their story leaves an ache in our imagination. We are not satisfied with not knowing. We need to understand how something so magnificent, so seemingly permanent, could simply dissolve back into the waves. This mystery forces us to confront the fragility of our own civilizations. Their fall is a silent echo of every fallen capital and every abandoned city in our own history. A reminder that no achievement, no matter how grand, is immune to the slow erosion of time or the sudden shock of catastrophe. Ultimately, their legend endures because it is a perfect mirror. In their mastery of the sea, we see our own technological ambitions. In their internal schisms, we see our own political divisions. And in their silent oceans, we see our own deepest fears of being forgotten. The Caravan Empire is not just a story we tell about the past. It is a conversation we are having with our own future, a siren's call that will lure the curious for as long as there are stars to navigate by and mysteries lying beneath the waves. The Caravan Empire's story is a monument to our longing for connection, a bridge built not just across water, but across the chasm between the world as it is and the world as it could be. We have traced their path from a star falling into the sea to the silent withdrawal of the ocean's favor, from the first whispered pact with the tides to the final, fading light of their phantom lighthouses. We have seen how their celestial grids foreshadowed our satellites and how their tidal resonance mirrors our own oceanographic models. Their civilization challenges the very border we draw between history and myth, suggesting that the grandest tales are often faded maps pointing to real, forgotten truth. This journey does not end with a final answer, but with an invitation. The greatest adventures have always begun with a question that has no easy reply. What other echoes of lost worlds are waiting in the deep or written in the stars above us? The mystery of the Caravan Empire belongs to all of us now. We would love to hear your own theories about what truly happened to them in the comments below. If you want to keep exploring the world's greatest enigmas with us, be sure to subscribe. Our next journey into the unknown is always just over the